Welcome, everybody, to the Freedom Fix podcast. My name is Derek. Today is January 3rd, Tuesday. Fresh new year ahead. Today on the show, we'll be talking about how the GOP attempts to kill the ethics office, later backing off on that. Trump continues to slam the mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, after murders reach record highs. Furthermore, we will be talking about how Trump managed to save another plant moving to Mexico. And on the tyranny side of the fence, we'll be talking about privilege cards that are out now. No, this is not a joke. Nancy Pelosi has warned Republicans ahead of the threats to repeal and replace Obamacare. I will also get to the dumb leftist comment of the day. Today, courtesy of a BuzzFeed commenter. Shocking. As well as in Hollywood producing more Republican news, I have something quite interesting there. So let's get right to it. Today, the GOP attempted to gut the Office of Congressional Ethics, which was created in 2008. It was created under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi, then Speaker of the House. Isn't it interesting how this office's lifespan mirrors that of our current president? But I won't make any comment on that. So the optics of this look pretty bad. But there have been some bipartisan calls to eliminate this office. Now, whenever you use the word ethics and you're trying to get rid of it, it definitely looks bad. So let's just look at the pros of this first, even though I will say right now, Trump came out against, and they have pulled this from the package that they were trying to put forward tomorrow as Congress holds session. So the pros of this, though, are it is not a bipartisan office. It is meant to be a watchdog for Congress, but really it's quite unbalanced right now. It consists of 5 Democrats, 1 independent, and 1 Republican on the board of directors for this office. In the era of targeting Republicans with government agencies, such as the IRS scandal that we all know about, where over 400 Republican groups were unfairly targeted, one may find it hard to believe this office is nothing more than another Democrat arm used to penalize its enemies. Now let's go to the cons. The optics of this look horrible for the Republicans. Trying to get rid of an ethics office, it just doesn't look good ahead of a Trump administration that already has a lot of hurdles with winning the hearts and minds of at least the left half of this country. It looks like they're trying to conceal their ethical transgressions ahead of the new administration in Congress. No way around that. Just looks bad. The office, well, I won't say will, but would have been absorbed into the House Ethics Committee, which is controlled by the majority party. Right now, that means Republican control, but that could also change in the future. Doesn't look like that future will be anytime soon, but still. It would give them the high level of power to enforce ethic rules for all of Congress. With that said, how can an office call themselves bipartisan when they have 70 to 85% of the power within that one office? So this is all a non-story now because Trump actually came out against it publicly on Twitter. As he tends to take everything, it goes public. And this time, Congress complied with his wishes. They decided to put a pause on this. Tomorrow they'll do some other things, but they will not be gutting this office. Right now, I guess I would just say that this gives you a good idea of what we might see ahead with the Trump administration when he disagrees with something. Let me just read what he said. He said, with all that Congress has to work on, do they really have to make the weakening of the independent ethics watchdog, as unfair as it may be, their number one act and priority? Focus on tax reform, health care, and so many other things of far greater importance. Hashtag DTS. So this could be either good or bad for Trump. We'll, get a glimpse into how he will act when he disagrees with his constituents. He goes public and he's vocal. That's not very shocking. For all of the backroom deals people think he'll make, he opted instead to make his stance public like usual. Already the House Republicans have caved on this plan, so they've dropped it, as I said. We can already see how much influence Trump will have on the legislative branch when he disagrees with their moves. So it should be interesting to see ahead what happens, but we'll just have to play the wait and see game. Next up, speaking of Trump, he slammed the mayor of Chicago after the year closed out, and it was a record year for Chicago. I'm not talking about the Chicago Bears. They have the number 3 pick in the draft this year. I'm talking about the murder rate. And it's really bad, just like the Bears. Chicago, I like this from Trump for a few reasons. And I'll just hit on the pros to this right now. Chicago is in really, really bad shape. It's also been under Democrat control for far too long. People are dying because of it. The last Republican to hold mayorship in Chicago was William Thompson. Don't remember that name? That's because he left office in 1931. Yes, 1931, around the Great Depression. Okay, so the Cubs have won the World Series in Chicago, so that drought has come to an end. But the chokehold Democrats have on the mayor's office, that has not. Maybe things could change, never know. Last year, in total, there were 4,331 shooting victims in Chicago, a total of 762 murders. That is about 2 a day, roughly. If this were a football game, the coach would be accused of running up the score. Like if this were Urban Meyer or any college coach, football coach, baseball coach, you name it, they would be accused of running up the score. It's so out of hand. Mayor Rahm Emanuel should be ashamed. He is at the helm of the ship. There's no getting around that. He has the power to make real changes to stop this stuff from happening. I would suggest starting with strengthening the police force rather than handcuffing them. So Trump continues to support the stop and frisk tactic, part of my speech there, an approach that worked in New York. So what is the stop and frisk if you don't know? Well, according to Cornell University Law School, it involves police intervention when they believe a crime is being committed or about to be committed based on reasonable suspicion. The police are allowed to pat down the suspects. Now, I don't see what's so outrageous or controversial about stopping a crime that's in progress or about to be in progress. Whether or not there's racial disparities means nothing. Stop the crime. We're talking about lives here. So let me just hit on that for just a little bit about the stop and frisk in New York. In New York, murders declined almost 80% from the early 1990s to 2013, along with felonies decreasing 75% during the same time span. This is according to Heather McDonald of the Wall Street Journal. Just wrote an excellent book on the war on cops. This prevents gangbangers from pistol gripping, as the rappers say. Opponents to this tactic say that it doesn't produce enough arrests. But this metric doesn't factor in the number of gangbangers who are deterred from bringing out their illegal weapons to commit crimes while they're out there selling drugs and, I don't know, doing gang-like things like being a horrible influence on our youth, intervening in society, causing a misallocation of resources to have to address this problem, later leading to people saying that it's a race issue, just to name a few things. This metric doesn't factor in the gangbangers who are deterred from bringing out their illegal weapons. Lives are being saved with stop and frisk. And people are worried about the race issue. Racial disproportions from this tactic can be entirely accounted for by the disproportionate level of crime occurring in these neighborhoods. Resources must be allocated efficiently, and it would not be efficient to allocate a large number of officers to low crime areas. Even attempting to reallocate police away from minority neighborhoods where innocent people are being blown away each day, including toddlers, is not only irresponsible, it's morally bankrupt. Yes, this will expose the racial disparity in regards to crime, and yes, it will also save lives and stop crime. Young black males are 36 times more likely than white peers to be murdered, and the murderers are virtually all black or Hispanic themselves. Protecting these innocent people requires strengthening police forces, not weakening them. It also requires us not being politically correct when it comes to the problem. We need to address it as it is. Fooling ourselves just to make ourselves feel better isn't going to save any lives. The same can be said in regards to the problem with terrorism. So the stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional by a U.S. District Judge, Shira Sheindland. It was back in 2013 in a ruling in the Floyd versus City of New York case. It was based on a flawed study by a professor who failed to consider the race of criminal subjects or suspects, as well as differentiating domestic homicides versus gang homicides. Due to this, it created a disparity that made it look as though there was some kind of anti-black bias, which there is not. As stop and frisk ended in New York, crime increased dramatically, with homicides up 20%. Some of these cities need to be kept in check. That's another reason why I like what Trump did here, calling them out. He threatened to use federal power to step in if they can't get this problem under control. And when you're having a record year in homicides, that may need to be what happens. So, with the rise of sanctuary cities and the blatant disregard of laws in this nation, cities are getting more and more bold. That's why I like this move here by Trump. The cons for this situation, very few. What could possibly go worse for the Chicago streets? They just had a record year of homicides. It's like the Cleveland Browns switching quarterbacks or trying a new coach out for a season. Re-electing a Democrat mayor in Chicago for 80 straight years is the political version of the Cleveland Browns quarterbacking dilemma. So, some more on Trump. He managed to save a plant from moving again, or at least it looks like he did. Ford announced that they've nixed a $1.6 billion Mexico plant, and they will be staying in Michigan. The pros of this, again, Trump finds a way to keep jobs in the U.S., delivering on campaign promises, even if his methods are a little sketchy. In the carrier deal, I fear there was too much government threats involved, but the Ford case appears to be different. Ford cited Trump's pro-growth policies as reason for this move. Ford's CEO, Mark Fields, spoke at an event today saying, "We believe these tax and regulatory reforms are necessary to boost U.S. competitiveness," believing that Trump and the new Congress will stick to these promises. So, if that's the reason, I don't have a problem with it. I don't know that I like the carrier deal where it seemed like they were threatening them with higher taxes or tariffs or whatnot. I like when he's just pro-growth policies, like just his general policies and the economic horizon looks good. I'll keep the plant here. Nothing wrong with that. You got to respect that. And if you're rooting against that, you're rooting against America. Even if you hate Donald Trump, I don't blame you. I'm just saying you got to at least be honest and fair and down the middle when it comes to things that are actually benefiting real people. And, I happen to be from Michigan, so I like to hear that. I like to hear that they're going to have a $700 million investment in a Michigan assembly plant when it was about to be a $1.6 billion Mexico plant. I mean, Michigan needs it. God knows Detroit needs it. I've been there. That place looks like they should have shot The Walking Dead there rather than starting it out in Atlanta. They would have saved on so much of the cost on setting up the set. All they got to do is just go to Detroit. So Trump criticism has the power to save jobs, apparently. Companies, whether out of fear or optimism, are deciding to stay put. If he delivers on the economic growth promised, he will look a lot better in the public eye than he did during the election cycle. Results will supersede rhetoric. Plain and simple. Cons to this deal? Zero, as long as this decision was free of government coercion. If we didn't like it when President Obama did it, we can't suddenly like it just because someone with an R next to their name does it. So we need to be fair there. So let's see. On the other side, on the side of tyranny news, privilege cards are out now, scolding white Christian males. Tired of the white people in your life? Maybe a heterosexual is giving you a headache? Head on over to Casa Girl. That is Casa Girl, in case you're trying to pick that up. Pick up a 10-pack of privilege cards to keep those pasty enemies in check. With a list of 7 privilege groups, along with a conveniently flexible 8th blank space, you can fill in your whatever you want, whoever happens to be your enemy that day. You can put a check next to each box where a category of person you hate inadvertently displays their better decision-making in life. Does that straight-A, pale-skinned overachiever keep getting on your nerves? Slap a privilege card on their desk and don't be shy about checking multiple boxes. Show them you mean it. Use a marker. With these passive-aggressive cards, you can ensure harmony in your workplace today by helping knock these people down a few pegs, really making them feel what you feel each day. Resentment of people based on skin color. Oh wait, maybe that would be a bad idea. It might cause a race war or start a divide in the country, unnecessarily causing groups of people to feel more tribal, generating conflict where there was none beforehand. On second thought, scrap that idea entirely. Let's just order coffee together and forget that identity politics exists. Moving on. I'm sure you can find that if you just want to look it up. I won't add a link in case you really do want those cards. But moving on. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi warned Republicans that Obamacare is in their court and that if they repeal it, you break, you own it, she says. Can anyone please tell her that it was already broken? Major insurers agree, which is why they've all pulled out of the disastrous experiment. Many would argue it was broken from the word go, right down to the very website you get the service from. Remember the laughable IT issues that website had in the early days? Couldn't even log on. Let's not forget what Nancy Pelosi herself said about the Affordable Care Act before it passed. She said, and I quote, "We have to pass this bill before you can see what's in it," unquote. How about the quote, "If you like your plan, you can keep your plan," unquote. So many lies preceded the Affordable Care Act. Its utter failure only confirms what a disservice these elites did to our country. They truly think they can spend your money better than you can. And it's based on nothing more than their own ambitions for power, not for the good of the people. The Affordable Care Act failed not because of Republicans, but because it never enrolled in Econ 101. It's a leftist policy straight out of a unicorn's behind, filled with hopes but no promise. Just a few reasons why it failed. And this is just a few. The skyrocketing premiums versus the low penalties for not enrolling. I know my parents, I know a lot of people who have premiums that are asinine. Yes, they have coverage, but they don't go to the doctor unless they absolutely have to because the premiums are ridiculous. The deductibles are ridiculous. Young people aren't enrolling. Healthy people aren't enrolling. That's another huge reason. They were unable to offset patients with pre-existing health conditions because that's not insurance. Insurance happens before the act. You can't insure something that's already happened. That's beyond logic. Let's just call it what it is. It's a government entitlement program. That's all this is. Anyway, furthermore, another issue, insurance companies were losing massive amounts of money just to keep this failed operation going. And they're finally all pulling out of it. It had nothing to do with Republicans. It was just the raw economics of it didn't add up. The numbers were stupid. It wasn't working for these insurers. How about the lie of it won't cost the taxpayers a dime? That turned into $4.7 trillion in new taxes. All right, enough of Obamacare and Affordable Care Act. That is what it is. It's pretty much done. The Grim Reaper's coming. Affordable Care Act. Watch your back. Watch your back. So, a segment I'd like to keep going. I'll try to do it every day because I think 365 days a year, you could probably come up with quite a list of comments. But the segment is going to be called Dumb Leftist Comment of the Day. Today's comment is brought to you by Hamilton Richards, a BuzzFeed commenter via Facebook. And here is his comment. I quote, "This is pathetic. Another story to get Donnie some brownie points. How much money did he get for this? When will Americans realize this guy is only in it for himself and doesn't want to make America anything again? Not to mention, he is now the one stealing jobs from Mexico. Racist POS." Unquote. Hamilton Richards is referring to the deal with Ford today. So, how immoral of us to take Ford jobs away from Mexico. I can't believe how many immigrants we stole from them as well. Can you believe us? Shame on us. We are horrible people. We're pathetic. You know you're a leftist when you're actually rooting for Mexico to take jobs just so the president fails. Imagine people rooting for water to seep on board the Titanic because of disagreements with people on board the ship. Mr. Richards believes Trump is stealing jobs from Mexico and he's a racist. Let's go down the leftist checklist and see if this comment fits any of the boxes. Did the comment contain hysteria? Did it contain blaming Republicans? Did it involve victimization? Or how about character attacks? Or lastly, did it lack evidence? I'm going to go down the line here and say hysteria for sure. For sure, he's just jumping to the conclusion that he's in it for himself and he's racist and he's stealing jobs from Mexico. That just seems a little hysterical to me. Clearly blaming. There's a lot of blaming going on there. And, of course, victimization. That's routine as far leftists go. Character attack. That's pretty much what he went for there, is saying he's a POS, racist POS, that is. Did it provide any evidence, really, to support any of these claims? No, zero, I would say. So actually, it lined up with all of those. I will refine that checklist. But as of now, Hamilton Richards, that is a perfect And this is a first-time segment, so I'm going to say that is a perfect 5 for 5. Way to go. Congratulations. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on one other thing. This is in Hollywood producing more Republicans news. Leftist actors, are there any other kind, made another PSA video lecturing Congress to stand in the way of Trump's racist, misogynistic, anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, anti-environmental policies. They said, "We demand that you vigorously oppose him."
Dear members of Congress.
Dear members of Congress.
Dear members of Congress.
Dear members of Congress.
I'm mad.
Flabbergasted.
Furious.
Concerned for my children.
I'm worried for everyone.
The majority of Americans, regardless of who they voted for,
did not vote for racism,
For sexism or for xenophobia. And yet Donald Trump won.
And since he won,
hate crimes are rising.
Women have been attacked in his name.
people of color attacked in his name.
You represent us in Congress.
you are our last line of defense.
So here's what we ask of our elected officials. No, here's what we demand.
To the extent that Trump pursues racist, sexist, anti-immigrant,
Anti-worker, anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, anti-environmental policies.
We demand that you vigorously oppose him.
You may recall just a couple weeks back that they produced a video calling for the electors to vote their conscience. You know, it's the type of videos where they repeat the same thing 20 times, but it's 20 different people saying the same thing, and then they all try and guilt you into whatever it is that they're saying. Well, this new video is the same thing. But going back to that other video about the electors, on December 19th, the voters did indeed vote their conscience, or the electors. More electors left Hillary than those who left Trump. The PSAs are about as effective as a hysterical, raging feminist, are there any other kind, of changing hearts and minds in their favor. They're effective, just not in the way they intend to be. Well, that is it for today's show. Thank you for listening here on Freedom Fix. Look forward to providing another podcast, hopefully tomorrow. I'm going to try to do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. 4 times a week if possible. Just want to say, enjoy the freedom. Don't forget it. It's easy to forget it, but here at freedomfix.com, we never forget how valuable our freedom is.